Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Traveling with Your Loved One, a Caregiver's Guide. My name is Lucy Gerland. I'm a caregiver specialist with the Fairfax Area Agency on Aging, and today's webinar will be taking place until 1 p.m. today. Earlier this morning, I sent out the slides that the speaker will be using, so you have them for your reference. This webinar is being recorded, so you will have an opportunity to review it if you want to and need to. You'll get a link to the recording. And at the end of the webinar, there will be a brief survey, and we would appreciate if you would fill that out and give us feedback on our webinars. So for this webinar, you all are in listen-only mode, but you can ask your questions at any time by typing them in the question box that's on a little panel that you have there. So now on to the good stuff. Our speaker today is Kristen Martin, and Kristen is a certified case manager with ElderLink, which is part of a public-private partnership with Inova Health System, the Fairfax Area Agency on Aging, and the Alzheimer's Association. Kristen has been with ElderLink for the past 10 years, working primarily with the Respite Care Program. She is now also a facilitator for one of ElderLink's newest programs called Caring for You, Caring for Me. This program is an education and support program for caregivers and the signature program of the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving. It's an excellent program, and if you are interested in participating in it, if you get our monthly newsletter, the Caregiver Corner Online, the sessions are advertised in there. If you don't get our monthly newsletter, just contact me. You all got an email from me this morning, and I can send you information on this program as well as on our monthly newsletter. The monthly newsletter will keep you informed of many things going on for caregivers, many education opportunities, webinars, seminars, not just with the Fairfax Area Agency on Aging, but with other local associations. Aside from all the things I've already told you about Kristen, I would like to add that Kristen is a very special and caring person. And if you ever get a chance to work with her, you will know that right away. And she's super helpful. She's ready to answer any of your questions. So I'll let her take it now. And please type in your questions as we go along. Thanks, Kristen.
All right, great. And thank you so much, Lucy. That brought such a smile to my face. So welcome everyone to Traveling with Your Loved One, a Caregiver's Guide. So in preparing for this webinar, it actually brought back a lot of personal firsthand experiences of traveling with my own grandmothers. So I've been blessed to have a lot of years with both of my grandmas. I have one grandmother who still lives up in New York. She's in her late 80s now. And this was my jet-setting grandma. She had the opportunity to travel quite a bit in her younger years. And then in retirement, she continued with her travels. She loved traveling to visit with family, and she loved traveling just to have a good time. In more recent years, though, she's experienced some health setbacks. So cognitively, she's aware of what's going on, but physically, she's suffered quite a decline in her functional abilities, and traveling is not something that she elects to do anymore. And it's amazing how timely preparing this webinar was for me, because just recently, this grandma had the opportunity to come to Virginia for a few weeks. So the family here was very excited at the prospect, thinking how great it would be for grandma to be with the family, have an opportunity to spend a lot of time with the great-grandkids. So we were busy on our end, looking into travel arrangements and other considerations that needed to be made. Ultimately, though, grandma did not feel comfortable making the trip at this point, and she decided that she would be more comfortable staying at home. My other grandmother lived locally, and she passed away a few months ago, just before her 97th birthday. And this grandma was extremely content and happy to be at home. She'd go on the occasional family vacation with us, but this grandma's travel was more goal focused. So for a family function, namely family reunions, weddings, or funerals, grandma would gladly make the trip. And she continued traveling with my parents into her early 90s, but then grandma started to show some increased confusion in unfamiliar surroundings. And it eventually got to the point where my parents realized that trying to coax grandma into going on another trip only increased her anxiety level. Day trips were okay, but overnight trips were no longer comfortable for her. So I'm mentioning the experiences with both of my grandmothers for a reference point, just in case another story or two happens to come up during the presentation in order for me to better illustrate a point. And I made the conscious decision to share experiences from my own family rather than the experiences of client families that I've come to know. Okay, so what is on tap today? What are our goals? Today, we're going to talk about traveling with your loved one. What we'll cover today is what you should consider before you plan a trip, so those pre-travel considerations, the benefits of the different modes of transport, so plane, train, automobile, or cruise, and then what resources are available to help you on a journey. So whether traveling with your loved one to visit with family and friends or to continue the annual tradition of the favorite vacation spot or the desire to explore a new destination, there are some factors to consider when preparing to travel. In a thoughtful brainstorm that aims to answer who, what, where, how, when, and why may help you anticipate some of the needs your loved one may have and help set you on course for a successful trip. All right, so who should you inform? The members of your support network. What should you ask, bring, and consider? Discuss preferences. What are your must-have items? What are some considerations of your loved one's diagnosis? Where are you going? Are you familiar with the location? Any concerns regarding accessibility? When are you going? Timing is everything. How are you going to get there? What are the pros and cons of the different modes of transport? And why are you bringing your loved one? What is the purpose of going through all this effort to travel with your loved one? So let's get into a little bit more detail with each of these, starting with the who. So in the professional support network, we have the doctor. Inform the doctor of your loved one's upcoming trip, and you would like to discuss preferably at least 6 weeks in advance to allow adequate time to address any health concerns. Ask the doctor for an official printout of your loved one's medical diagnoses and current medications, both brand name and generic, and include the dosage and purpose of each prescription. If you're crossing time zones, ask your healthcare provider whether the medications should be adjusted to the local time zone. It also wouldn't hurt to ask if there might be any foods outside of your loved one's typical diet that should be avoided while traveling due to concern of a medication interaction. If there is any concern about increased anxiety or agitation, speak with your loved one's doctor to see if a medication could be prescribed to help your loved one feel a little more relaxed. However, you would not want your trip to be the first time that your loved one tries a new medication, no matter the reason why it is being prescribed. And just in general, ask your loved one's doctor if there are any other potential concerns or issues that should be on your radar. Also included in the professional support network are private pay agencies. And this may be an option that you may want or need to consider for a variety of reasons. So maybe you need the extra support to help meet your loved one's personal care needs. You usually have the assistance of an aide at home, and you would like your loved one to continue receiving that assistance on the trip. Or maybe it's a situation of traveling to a long anticipated wedding, and your loved one wants to get ready for bed right when the reception is starting, which would bring an early end to your night as well. There are numerous reasons why it might be beneficial to hire private pay assistance. So how do you find these potential resources if you are not familiar with the area? Well, ideally, it would be a word of mouth referral from a friend or family member who lives in the area. Another option, though, is to contact the local area agency on aging at the travel destination to see if they could send you a list of possible providers. There is also the business of travel companion services, where you hire an aide to travel with you and your loved one instead of waiting to arrange for care once you arrive at your destination. This is certainly a more expensive option to pursue, but depending on the circumstances, it may be a necessary consideration for some families. And then, as a potential lifeline of support for yourself, provide an itinerary of your travel plans to other people who may be involved in your loved one's care, but not traveling with you. And this is a just in case move, just in case something happens and you need to rally the troops for support. Okay, moving on to the what. Open communication. So involve your loved one to the extent that he is able. Open communication is very important to determine what preferences your loved one may have or if she has any specific concern. Seek your loved one's input so they feel involved in the planning process. Okay, considerations of limitations. If your loved one has Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia, you'll want to spend some extra time planning. In terms of how you are planning to get wherever you are going, go with the mode of transport that will be the most comfortable for your loved one and the least anxiety provoking. If you are traveling for leisure and you do not need to be at any specific destination for a planned activity, think about going with the familiar. So a destination that your loved one frequented before developing dementia. Once you arrive at your destination, keep in mind the importance of adhering to a familiar routine. So this helps to lessen anxiety, stress, and fear, and also be sensitive to situations that may increase anxiety or agitation for your loved one, such as an overly loud or noisy atmosphere. And this makes me think of a crowded event or a family gathering, which can be very boisterous. People are excited to see one another. Many different conversations are going on at the same time. And going back to the experience with my own grandmother, this was not a comfortable spot for her to be in. If your loved one does start to show anxiety or agitation, have a plan in your mind for how to best handle the situation. Another thought to keep in mind, the behavior of wandering can be brought on by changes in environment. So you may want to consider enrolling your loved one in the Safe Return program through the Alzheimer's Association. So it's the Medical Alert Alzheimer's Association Safe Return, and this is a 24-hour nationwide emergency response service for individuals with Alzheimer's or a related dementia who wander or who have a medical emergency. And this program provides 24-hour assistance no matter when or where the person is reported missing. If traveling with someone who has a physical impairment and you are planning to check out a new destination, you may want to consider working with a travel agent who can plan an itinerary that will take into account accessibility issues, as well as being able to help book accommodations that are ADA compliant and fully accessible. Just in general, when planning the day's activities, you'll want to plan around the time of day that is best for your loved one. So maybe it takes your loved one a while to get moving in the morning, so early afternoon might be a more realistic time to plan an outing. Also included in the what are what items you need to have readily available as you travel with your loved one. So these are your must-have items. And this would include medications, water, snacks, change of clothing, and any other type of medical equipment that your loved one may be reliant upon. Also be sure to pack photocopies of important documents, such as the power of attorney, any advance directives, or living will. You'll want to have your loved one's insurance cards and identification, a list of the current medication and dosages, and then the contact details of family or friends who could be contacted in an emergency. So I wanted to mention travel insurance. Travel insurance is a precautionary measure to consider, particularly if your loved one has a health condition that makes them more vulnerable. Travel insurance usually covers the cost of canceled flights, lost baggage, but not necessarily the cost of medical care that you may need if overseas. So if traveling abroad, take a look at the health insurance policy to see if it covers any type of overseas protection. If not, then you may want to investigate the option of a short-term supplemental policy to cover any type of medical care or evacuation services that could be needed. In the event of illness or injury while overseas, travel medical insurance covers the cost of various levels of overseas medical treatment in the event of an emergency. And medical evacuation services provides air ambulance, medical evacuation, or medical escort service coverage for overseas traveler. And the Department of State website provides options for US-based travel and medical insurance companies, foreign-based travel and medical insurance companies, and then finally, medical evacuation and insurance companies. So it's just a consolidated way to check out some options that may be available. Okay, moving on to the where. Are you traveling to an already familiar spot where you are knowledgeable about the area, or do you need to take some time to research the amenities? Are the accommodations handicap accessible? Is the terrain navigable if your loved one is using a mobility device such as a cane, a walker, or a wheelchair? Even if you are booking a hotel that is ADA compliant and fully accessible, keep in mind that your loved one may require more help. If staying in other accommodations, such as the house of another family member or a friend, the assistive devices your loved one needs to remain safe and independent may not be in place. So again, more of a helping hand may be needed. So this made me think of the last family wedding that Grandma went to with us. And we were staying in a hotel and took for granted that physically Grandma could handle her own personal care needs, but she wasn't familiar with how the hotel shower worked. So it was how to switch the water from the faucet to the overhead spray. And I think this made Grandma feel a little embarrassed that she couldn't figure out how to work the shower until she finally made the comment that she didn't think her shower was working properly. So then the family clued in, okay, we need to make sure that Grandma is comfortable in this new setting. And Grandma wasn't readily asking for additional help, but just knowing her gentle personality, the family learned that we needed to be a little more perceptive to what the needs may be in a new environment. Okay, the how. So plane, train, automobile, or cruise. Each mode of transport has its own pros and cons. So you want to consider the option that will be best suited for your loved one. You'll also want to anticipate for the comfort level of your loved one, particularly if they will be seated for an extended period of time. So thrombosis, when a blood clot forms in your blood vessel, can be a very serious concern. And when sitting for a long period of time and not moving your legs, your calf muscles don't contract. And it's this contraction that normally helps blood to circulate. So as a precaution, schedule regular breaks to stand up and stretch, just walk around for a bit. If your loved one is not able to stand, then encourage them to do some seated exercises, maybe marching in place or even just pumping their feet. Also be aware of needs regarding proper hydration, medication management, and possible toileting issues as well. Okay, so we're going to take a brief look now at each of the modes of transportation to brainstorm some of the benefits and drawbacks that you might want to consider. We'll go ahead and start with the car. So what are the pros of driving along in your automobile? The first, control over schedule. So you have control over the schedule. When you leave, when you arrive, any unscheduled stops you'd like to make along the way. Another pro, economical. So even with the cost of gas and tolls, driving is still usually the most economical way to go, especially if you're traveling with multiple people. Another positive, no packing restrictions. You are free to take as much as you like, as comfortably as you can pack in the car. All right, how about some of the cons, some of the negatives? Time spent in travel. So a 3-hour drive can easily turn into a 5 or 6 hour drive, depending on traffic and weather conditions. Another negative consideration is full responsibility. So the con of being in charge is that you are in charge. You are responsible for planning the route, for packing the car, for driving the car, and that can add up to a lot of stress, especially if you are also responsible for caring for and meeting the needs of your loved one as well. Comfort level and limited space. So depending on the size of your vehicle, you may not have enough space to pack everything you need comfortably. Be sure that when you are packing the car, that you are leaving your loved one with enough leg room and not packing every square inch of the car. I know on my family road trips, we've definitely been in the situation where we've utilized every inch of space and you end up sitting with bags underneath your feet, and that is not a comfortable way to be traveling. The option exists to rent a larger vehicle, which may help to assist not only with comfort level, but accessibility as well. Okay, so car, moving on to plane. So the number one benefit of airline travel is the reduced travel time. You're able to get where you're going much more quickly. Let's talk about some of the cons. So the cost. Although flying may be the fastest and thus the preferred mode of transport for many, the expense may make it cost prohibitive for many as well. So it may not be a realistic option for you. Another negative, the inflexibility of schedule. So you're tied to a fixed schedule and you do not have the flexibility to make last minute changes. Compromised comfort level. So the comfort of airline seating leaves much to be desired with the limited legroom, unless you're flying business or first class. And the ease of using the airline restroom may prove challenging for some due to the cramped space. Another consideration is the airport location and the layout of the airport itself. So the first leg of your journey is actually getting your loved one to the airport and then navigating through the airport to reach the plane. So you definitely need to accommodate for the extra time involved as you travel through the airport. And then finally, the security screening procedures. So the security measures, although absolutely necessary, can be an additional hurdle to manage. And we'll talk about this in a little more detail. So I wanted to mention the Air Carrier Access Act. And the Air Carrier Access Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in air travel. The Department of Transportation has a rule defining the rights of passengers and the obligations of airlines under this law. And this rule applies to all flights of the U.S. airlines, as well as to flights to or from the U.S. by foreign airlines as well. So the Air Carrier Access Act outlines the prohibition of discriminatory practices, accessibility of facilities, and other services and accommodations. So in regards to the discriminatory practices, airlines must make accommodations to give people with disabilities access to the same travel opportunities as people without disabilities, unless doing so would endanger the health or safety of other passengers. Airlines may require up to 48 hours advance notice for certain accommodations that require preparation time. So maybe the setup of a respirator hookup or the transportation of an electric wheelchair on an aircraft with less than 60 people. Those are two examples. Additional guidelines, though, can be found on the website above. Under the accessibility of facilities, new aircraft with 30 or more seats must have movable aisle armrest on half of the aisle seats in the aircraft. New twin aisle aircraft must have accessible lavatories. New aircraft with 100 or more seats must have priority space for storing a passenger's folding wheelchair in the cabin. And finally, aircraft with more than 60 seats and an accessible lavatory must have an onboard wheelchair. Under other services and accommodations, this includes that airlines are required to provide assistance with boarding, deplaning, and making connections, and accommodations are made for the storage of medical equipment. So although the guidelines of the Air Carrier Access Act should be standard across the board, it's still a wise idea to call ahead and speak with the specific airline that you'll be using. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about airport security screening. So in dealing with airport security screening matters, start by doing research so you know what to expect and what your rights are, as well as the rights of your loved one. And the TSA website offers specific descriptions for the methods of screening for passengers who are age 75 and older, as well as screening procedures for medications, for various disabilities, and other medical devices as well. Your loved one will be screened, but the TSA will accommodate for special needs. So in general, a person is not required to remove shoes if there are disabilities and certain medical conditions present. However, shoes must undergo additional screening to include a visual physical inspection as well as explosives trace detection testing of the footwear. You can request that your loved one be seated during this portion of the screening. Medication and all medical devices will also be screened. It's important to keep in mind that if your loved one has a pacemaker, do not use the metal detector. It's up to you to bring this to the attention of the TSA officer. And part of the pre-planning with the doctor may be asking about appropriate screening measures given any internal medical devices that your loved one may have. So this is an example of the TSA notification card. And one way to make a TSA officer aware of a medical condition is with the TSA notification card. And you can print this from the TSA website. Individuals may provide an officer with a TSA notification card or other medical documentation in order to describe the condition that your loved one is dealing with in a discreet manner. Travelers may also request an accommodation to the screening process. And I just wanted to read this to you because I think the print may be a little small, but it reads TSA notification card, individuals with disabilities and medical conditions. I have the following health condition, disability, or medical device that may affect my screening, and then you have a box to write in. I understand that alternate procedures providing an equivalent level of security screening are available and can be done in private. I also understand that presenting this card does not exempt me from screening. And then the back of the card has contact information for more information that may be needed to request additional assistance, as well as to provide any compliments or complaints. So with airport security screening, the key here is communication. So if you have any concerns, talk with the TSA officer regarding your concerns. let the TSA officer know what disability your loved one is dealing with. TSA Cares is a helpline that provides travelers with disabilities, medical conditions, and other special circumstances additional assistance during the security screening process. So you'll want to call 72 hours prior to traveling with any questions that you may have about screening policies, procedures, or what to expect at the security checkpoint. Travelers requiring special accommodations or who are concerned about the security screening process at the airport may ask a TSA officer or a supervisor for a passenger support specialist who can then provide on-the-spot assistance. Okay, so we spoke about cars, we spoke about plane, now we're going to move on to train. All right, the pros of train travel, comfort and relaxation. So certainly more comfortable accommodations than flying or driving, more leg room, you have the ability to get up and stretch, read a book, take a nap. Another pro is the luggage allotment. You also have a greater luggage allotment than with flying. For example, Amtrak allows you to check up to 4 bags, up to 50 pounds each, which is quite a bit of luggage. Cost is another benefit to consider as well. Again, Amtrak offers discounts to travelers who use a wheelchair and to their travel companion as well, and this ranges from 15 to 50%. You do need to show proof of disability such as a doctor's note or transit ID card in order to be eligible. So some of the cons of train travel, adherence to a schedule. So the consideration again, just like with an airline, is adhering to a set schedule. Another consideration is station location. So although most train stations are usually more conveniently located in city centers, the transport to the train station is still an extra step that needs to be considered due to the extra time that needs to be allotted. Okay, cruise. So as opposed to a mode of transport, cruising is the vacation and holiday option. So cruising is becoming a very popular option for many families as it provides activity options for the whole span of family generations. So let's talk about some of the pros. Vacation with several destinations, less planning. So this holiday option allows you to see several destinations during the course of the cruise with more minimal planning on your end. Another pro, accessible features. So many cruise lines can accommodate the needs of travelers who may have mobility impairments or some form of dementia. And most ships offer accessible staterooms that may have bathrooms with a roll-in shower and grab bars, wider doorways. And the public areas on a ship are also fairly accessible with wide corridors, elevators, and wheelchair ramps. Bathrooms are often wheelchair accessible, and several cruise lines offer family bathrooms so that there is enough space for a caregiver to assist a loved one. Cruises also offer a wide variety of activities, and depending on an individual's ability level and energy level, a person can participate as little or as much as they would like. So some of the cons, size of a ship. So the big cruise lines are often the size of several football fields, which may be a little overwhelming for some, either due to the level of physical fatigue trying to get around or increased confusion for a person with a cognitive impairment. There are certainly smaller cruise options available though. Another possible negative is detouring is not an option. So once you are out at sea, you are out at sea until you reach the next port. And then finally, location of the cruise departure ports. So once again, a consideration here will be getting to the port of departure with your loved one, which will most definitely involve a car ride, maybe an airplane ride as well though. So some unique considerations, if interested in looking into the cruise option. When booking the cruise, you want to inform staff about any type of cognitive impairment or physical limitation that your loved one may have so that they are best able to help accommodate any needs that may be present. Also ask about priority booking and disembarkation, so extra assistance will be available to you and your loved one. When selecting your room, choose one that has an advantageous location. So maybe this is close to the dining areas or the activities. Adjoining staterooms are also an option to consider if you book far enough in advance. You might also consider decorating the outside of your room just so that the door is more easily recognizable, both for you and your loved one. Particularly, so if we talk about identification and safety considerations, particularly if your loved one has some form of dementia, make sure that your loved one is wearing some form of identification that includes the room number and contact details of the caregiver. Also have a current photo of your loved one readily available. Another idea is to dress your loved one in distinctive clothing, so maybe some bright colors, if some form of dementia is present, just so that they're easier to pick out in a crowd. To provide caregivers with more peace of mind, many cruise lines are also starting to offer GPS tracking devices, which would be especially helpful for individuals who may have a cognitive deficit. Also, if there are any concerns about your loved one wandering at night, you can install a portable door alarm, which will sound and hopefully wake you up if the door is opened. And this type of door alarm would also be a good idea if you're staying in a hotel or even the home of another family member or a friend, and it's an unfamiliar environment for your loved one. If new to the cruising world, Special Needs at Sea is a company that is dedicated to fulfilling the special needs requirements for persons who want to travel, but who need mobility aids, oxygen, or other types of medical equipment. And you can rent a wide range of equipment that can be delivered directly to the ship or to a hotel as well. And this website also offers a feature that allows you to research the accessibility features of the major cruise lines. So they've done a large chunk of research for you already. Okay, so let's talk about the when. If possible, consider traveling during the time of day that is best for your loved one. So this might be the time of day that your loved one may be less prone to agitation or anxiety, or maybe the time of day that your loved one is feeling better after the medications have had time to take effect. Cushions of time. So slow and steady wins the race, the pace of your itinerary. Again, cushions of time are so important. So for example, if you're traveling by car, be sure to schedule regular stops to stretch, use the restroom. If traveling by plane and needing to board a connecting flight, allow ample time so your loved one does not need to rush. When you arrive at your destination, make sure the pace of your itinerary is conducive to allowing your loved one time to rest and recharge. You'll want to be realistic about the amount of activity your loved one is capable of, as well as the amount of activity that you are capable of as caregiver. Keep in mind that being outside the familiarity of the home environment, you may need to be doing more as caregiver in order to provide the support your loved one needs. Depending how your loved one is feeling, as well as how you are feeling, try to keep your plans flexible to best accommodate the situation. So it may need to be more of a go with the flow approach. Okay, so the why. Everyone who travels benefits from the social connection and engagement, as well as the opportunity for increased cognitive stimulation and mental activity. And studies have certainly shown the benefit of keeping the mind engaged in some form of social, mental, or productive type of activity. And new experiences, such as those that come along with traveling, help to booster the healthy connections among brain cells. Motivation. So your reason for traveling may be out of necessity or purely for pleasure. But a question to ask yourself is what is behind your motivation for bringing your loved one along? So give time for self reflection to make sure that your reason for taking your loved one on a trip is not for your own needs, but for the benefit of your loved one. It's also important to consider your level of stress as a caregiver. So the why here refers back to the what in regards to the importance of open communication with your loved one. What are their preferences and what is their level of anxiety while traveling? You know your loved one's ability is best. So, keeping this in mind may help steer your efforts towards planning a shorter, less stressful trip that will, in the long run, be more satisfying and enriching for your loved one. Okay, so this slide is a compilation of several different websites that might come in handy if you plan to do some additional research before traveling with your loved one. And I've also included the intake line for ElderLink. We offer 1 hour caregiver consultations free of charge, and these can be scheduled either in the office or completed over the phone. And it's an opportunity to discuss a caregiving situation that you may be facing, to see what options may be available, help you do some troubleshooting of the situation. Okay, so as a recap, remember the who, what, how, where, when, and why brainstorm when planning to travel with your loved one. So who should you inform? The members of your professional and social support network. What should you bring, ask, consider? What preferences or concerns does your loved one have? What are your must-have items? What are the considerations of your loved one's diagnosis that you should be aware of? Where are you going? So do you have familiarity with the location? Any considerations with accessibility issues? When are you going? So the time of day that is best for your loved one. How are you getting there? Which mode of transport offers the most comfort, but also practically what makes the most sense for your particular circumstances? And then why? Why are you bringing your loved one? What is the purpose and motivation for traveling with your loved one? So, although there are still bound to be those stress-filled moments, by focusing on the what in terms of your loved one's preferences and concerns regarding travel, as well as for the why in terms of your motivation for making the effort to coordinate these plans, you will hopefully create memories of traveling with your loved one that will be cherished for years to come. And again, just reflecting on my own family, some of those stress-filled travel moments with my grandmothers have become some of the favorite family stories to share. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me this afternoon, and I hope that you learned some helpful information or at least some food for thought or considerations for making plans to travel with your loved one.
Wow. Thank you, Kristen. That was so much great information and very understandable from the way you presented it so clearly. I will remind participants that you do have these slides that Kristen showed, and especially with the resources at the end. So you'll have that available to you. And if you have any questions, just type them into the question bar. Kristen, I do have a few questions here for you.
Okay.
First question, do you have any idea how much the Alzheimer's Association Safe Return system is? And is it something that you do just while you're away, or do you have to do a contract for a month, a year?
Let me try to look that up right now. All right, bear with me 1 second. Okay, so the cost is $55 plus a $7 shipping and handling fee. And in terms of, it's a $35 annual renewal fee. So it's a year membership.
Oh, that sounds very reasonable.
Yeah, it certainly is very reasonable.
And it goes anywhere? It's
In the US, so nationwide.
nationwide. Okay. All right. And to get that, somebody would just contact the Alzheimer's Association.
Yeah, so on the additional resources that were provided, there's a link to the Alzheimer's Association for some additional research.
Okay. All right. So another question is, I'm going to be attending a large family gathering. Mom is quite different from how many of the people will remember her.
Mm.
How can I and do I need to prepare them?
Yeah, no, that is a very important consideration. Um, just so family members may know what to expect, I would certainly share with them some of the changes that your mom has been going through. Um, we don't want people to be uncomfortable around your mom, but we also want them to be aware that if there is any type of behavior that they're seeing that may be considered a little negative, it's not something she's doing on purpose. It may be the progression of the disease. So it is extremely helpful to bring family members up to speed with some of the changes that are going on.
Okay, thank you. I had a sort of opposite situation when my mom was first starting to develop her dementia, and we were going to a family reunion when we had to make the decision that it would not be possible for us to bring her because of the logistics and everything involved. And so I had to face my family saying, "Where's your mom?" And
Mm-hmm.
it was very difficult to kind of feel like I had to justify not bringing her.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a whole
Yeah,
different.
and it's so important in that situation to consider your stress as a caregiver. We also had a family situation very similar to that. And, it would have been just too uncomfortable of a situation for grandma to be going through not only the travel, but also being in that unfamiliar environment, the commotion that typically goes on. Um, and sometimes it is difficult for family members who are not readily involved in the care to understand unless they have that firsthand type of experience.
Yeah. Um, Next question. My family is traveling to the beach this summer. My father is wheelchair bound. So this is a beach that's about 5 or 6 hours from us. Which mode of transportation do you recommend?
So I would think that it really depends on your specific set of circumstances. I would think car might be the easier way to go, just since with airports, I wouldn't think any airports may be located too close to a beach location, so it would still involve not only going through the airport, but then probably at least another hour car ride or 2 hour car ride once you get to um, the closest airport in the beach town or the beach close to the beach.
That's a good point. And the other thing with air travel is getting there so early, and then you have to sit in the airport because they always tell you get there 2 hours early so you can go through security and all that.
Right, and thank you. That's a very good point. In some situations, traveling by air is unavoidable. I know we live in a world that is very a lot of family members may live overseas, so there is the need, and the only way to get there is by using the plane or by flying. So there are some additional hurdles certainly to go through with traveling. Going through the security and just the length of time waiting at the airport that can be an additional stressor for families. But again, the TSA is doing what they can to accommodate for people who may have special needs to make it as less of a stressful experience as possible.
Well, that's good to know that they are aware of these things and working on it. But yes, airports, I would imagine, present many multiple challenges
Mm,
because even once you get through the security, then to get to your gate might involve a lot of escalators, elevators, special uh, transports from the trains and things.
yeah,
So,
you journey through the
yeah,
airport before you even get to the plane, that's for sure.
yeah. Okay, here's another good question. Any recommendations for having these discussions with older parents who do not think they have issues? Usually the issues arise once we arrive.
Okay, well, I would be curious if there are certain issues that arise that are recurrent. So if you can kind of anticipate what the needs may be, and have a plan in your mind already for how to handle the situations. You know, again, I think just saying, "Hey, mom, dad, we're going to wherever it may be. What are your thoughts? Do you have anything that you're worried about? Any preferences or anything you would like to do once we get there?" And just see what type of conversation that may generate. But again, if this is something recurrent that you're seeing and you might have an ability to plan ahead for what the needs may be, then at least you're in a more prepared, you're approaching the situation instead of reactive. You can try to be as proactive as you can.
Yes. Well, I would like to highlight something that you said about the consultation, the 1 hour consultations that are available through ElderLink, because you did mention that toward the end here. And there is a phone number to call, but could you discuss that in a little more depth and when might be the best time for a caregiver to consider having that?
Anytime. We certainly work with caregivers who have been caregiving for many, many years, and there's just, a situation that they're currently dealing with that they would like to have some professional feedback. And, we can provide some options that maybe they haven't thought of before, or sometimes it's just a matter of reassuring them that no, you are doing everything that you can be doing, you are on the right course. And it's just that reassurance to let people know they are doing a good job. And then we have caregivers who are very new to the caregiving world. And, Fairfax County is a wonderful place to grow older, but sometimes it can be a little confusing just knowing what resources are out there. So the caregiver consult is a great way just to have that overview of what may be available to provide support, not only to the caregiver, but also to the loved one who they're caring for.
Mhm. Okay, and that is really an excellent resource. Everything being individualized, and all of the staff that does those consultations is very knowledgeable and caring. So I encourage you all to think about that, and if it's something that you might want to take advantage of, you have the number there to do that. Also, I had mentioned that we do have an email newsletter that comes out monthly, and um, you are welcome to sign up for that. Contact me if you need subscription information. We do have a few more webinars coming up through November. So the same place that you signed up for this one, you can sign up for those. Our next one is August 8th, and it's Dementia 101. So we look forward to seeing you again at other webinars. Please answer the survey that will pop up as you go out. And Kristen, once again, thank you for an excellent webinar and really very useful and thought-provoking information.
Great. Thank you, Lucy. And thank you for tuning in, everyone.